So this video I'm going to talk to you about the link between breathwork and the common styles of breathwork that we see today to Tantra and the ancient origins of Tantra, and also its link to SOMA. That's right, the Vedic SOMA, this famous psychedelic ritual that would allow the rishis to speak to the gods and to become immortal. That actually, arguably, is the foundation story for Tantra itself. So let's break this all down and actually explain the sources and the theories of the information that suggests that the origins of breathwork itself comes from this ancient ritual of SOMA. Okay, so thousands and thousands of years ago, nobody really knows the true timeline for this. There was a time talked about in the Rig Veda, which is the world's most ancient religious manuscript, that humans lived for very long periods of time. There were gods on the earth who were addicted to this ritual of consuming a concoction called SOMA. Nobody really knows what it is. Okay, some people think it's mushrooms, some people think it's cannabis, ephedra. The truth is, nobody really, to this day, knows exactly what it is. What we do know is that the gods are addicted to it. They were intoxicated by it. And they used the rituals of consuming SOMA to have a divine connection with the gods, to become immortal, to improve their health, all kinds of things like this. It was literally like a cure-all for everything. And people were dependent on it at this time. So what happened was, according to the legend, the SOMA becomes controlled. It's harder to get it, or it may be because it starts to run out as the rishis start to move around, create civilizations around the world, and something happens to the supply of SOMA. And this freaks all the gods out, because the gods are so addicted to the SOMA. They're so hooked to it, especially God Indra. And he orders everyone to go inward to discover how to create the SOMA within. And it's this quest of creating the SOMA within that made the rishis realize that we actually already have every substance that exists in nature already within us, waiting to be unlocked. And they realized it was the breath. The breath was the way, through conscious control of the breath, to have conscious control over the inner world. And through the conscious control of the inner world, we could wake up like an inner pharmacy inside us, and we could then create an alignment with the outer world. And we can get into these mystical states where we can actually create the same kind of effects as what SOMA was giving us, but we could also use it for different purposes. And that became the origin of pranayama. That's right, energy control. Pranayama, which is a branch of the ancient tantric yoga traditions. And according to a very good documentary by Ranjan Chowdhury called The Psychedelic Origins of Spirituality and Religion, and he talks a lot about SOMA in this. You can watch this on YouTube. He discusses that potentially that this quest to break the addiction that we all have to stuff that the ancients had was the origin story of Tantra. And Tantra became a methodology to create the same effects without having to consume and be dependent on external things for our bliss. That's right. So there is also another great book by David L. Spess, which is called SOMA, the Divine Hallucinogen, where he also links these ancient shamanic tribes and cultures and this SOMA legend to then the origins of breathwork cults and tribes that spread around the world and actually also became the originators of civilization and this way of life we have today. But it took thousands and thousands of years of evolution to get to where we are today. And in that time, a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of myths, a lot of stories have appeared over the time, and a lot of suppression of information has happened as well. So we have to rely on these sources, and some of them are really good, some of them not so good, and to really figure out what is going on. So what I like to do is actually look at some of these myths, these legends. I also like to look at these historical accounts and interpretations by people like Ranjan Chaudhary and David L. Spess. And what I like to do from that is to then look at mechanisms to see, does Tantra, do these tantric techniques create the same effects potentially as psychedelics? And in doing so, I've realized that actually they very much do. They really do. If you understand the physiology of pranayama. Okay, so pranayama and Tantra pretty much go hand in hand. And tantric breathing techniques and energy moving techniques using certain postures and breath work and intention are pretty much what we find in the modern day tantric techniques as well, and even the Sufi practices, breathing practices. And we also find them in certain styles of yoga like Raja Yoga, tantric yoga techniques that have been kind of hidden away in the Himalayas for a long time. This kind of kumbhaka techniques from certain like yogic styles that have been suppressed, they've been hidden. And now they're starting to be resurfaced and revisited. And I'm much an advocate of these ancient practices and putting science to them. So I'm going to help you understand the link between Tantra and how to invoke these psychedelic states through Tantra, and the link between Tantra and SOMA and Breathwork in this video, in the rest of this video. Okay. So, what Tantra actually means body. The Tan means body, and Tantra is the art of using the body and to create these divine states of bliss, oneness, connection, to unravel the mystery of who you are and to really understand who you are. It's like a self-realization tool that will give you a sense of peace and the ability to stay at one and in your flow at all times, whatever situation you're in. The idea of Tantra really is about improving your default state. So your default state is a state when you're not doing any techniques, you're not meditating, you're not doing anything. And it's a state where you're just fully present. And the idea of this is to improve this default state as you go on and progress by practicing these practices on an ongoing basis, so it becomes a way of life. But it means that your default state improves gradually over time. And the default state is a state where you're fully present, where you're not worrying about the past, and you're not holding on to negative emotions from the past, or any grudges or ill feelings or guilt or jealousy, envies from things that have happened in the past. You have forgiveness, you have compassion. At the same time, you are not worrying about the future. You're not freaking out about the future, having lots of anxiety and worry. Your default state, therefore, is fully present and at one, and where you're having faith in your own self, in your own inner world. So this was the one of the core purposes of Tantra. And through this, you can liberate yourself from sufferings from the past and worries about the future. It's a tool of liberation from the ills and pains of existence. That's right. And this gives you a more closer connection to the divine. Okay, so through Tantra as well, we can invoke more creativity, we can create more passion for life, and we can use the tantric philosophies and techniques to actually get more stuff done and have more fun. And it can improve every area of your life. And there's tantric techniques for making love, for eating food, for cooking food, for how to do music, art. Everything has an intention, a purpose. And the idea of it is to explore the senses, not suppress them, and explore them to have the most impactful and enjoyable and passion-filled life that you can possibly have. That's right. Okay. So, the point of Tantra as well is to just play fully, to really play out your karma, your dharma, and find your life path and purpose. And one of the ways of doing this is looking at Tantra as a tool for reprogramming and reaching enlightenment. And so there's also a misconception about enlightenment, what it really means. Okay, now what enlightenment really has an association to is this sense of free will. And the Eastern religions suggest that we don't have any free will and that we are born with programs, with a karma that we must play out, and we must surrender to that because we are literally like sleeping robots playing out programs. We're in a sleeping trance and we should just surrender to that. Therefore, we can suppress the programs that can get us into danger and cause disharmony in the environment. And the idea is just to surrender, get into meditation, be in meditative states so that you're just like not reacting to bad programs and behaviors. And it's kind of it's like a suppression tool, which I'm not a huge fan of. And it's basically also the understanding that nothing is your fault because you're just a robot playing out these karmic behaviors and patterns. However, it's all about forgiveness. Forgiveness for everyone, all humanity, because all they're doing is playing out these karmic patterns. And also having compassion for yourself, because anything that happened in the past is a result of your own karma, your own patterns and your robotic behavior, and to also not have guilt for that, the fact that you're just a robot. So it's really a suppression of the robot ideology so that you can avoid harm. That's right, harm to others and to yourself. And through that, surrender is where you get the enlightenment. But it takes a long time to do it that way. The other opposite side, the Western religious understanding is that we are born into sin, that everything's our fault, that we have free will. And so every mistake you make on this planet will determine whether you go to heaven or hell. So the more mistakes you make, the more sins you commit, the less you learn from them, the more likely you are to go to hell. It's quite a kind of an unforgiving religion actually for that. And that's like the Abrahamic religions like Christianity and Islam, which have this idea of heaven and hell. So it's completely the opposite understanding, and that we have full free will, and the Eastern idea is that we don't have free will. Now the middle path is the tantric path, which is what I subscribe to, and this is the idea that yes, we are robots, yes, we are born with conditions. The first 7 years of your life is where most of those conditions and imprints happen. However, we can reprogram. We can use certain techniques to reprogram and to install new patterns, new behaviors, so we can become free. And we can cultivate a sense of free will, more control. And the prerequisite for control is the control of the breath. The control of the breath gives us the control over the mind and the body. This is the tantric path. This is the path that I subscribe to. That's right. So how does this relate to breathwork and breathing and SOMA? Well, the idea is that through breath, through the breathing techniques, we can actually invoke certain altered states of consciousness where we can reprogram our operating system. That's right. Imagine the mind like an operating system. We can step out of it, alter our perception, and reprogram it like we are our own computer program, our own software program. That's right. And that way, it's like a form of hypnosis. We can go into these altered states of consciousness and and actually erase bad habits that don't serve us. We can install new habits, new ideas. We can even learn new talents and skills at a faster rate. We can become the person we want to be. We can realize what our conditionings are and how they've taken us to where we are, but we can upgrade our thoughts. We can upgrade our decision making and our ability to take action and change. And the idea of this is change, brain change, according to will. And the idea is that we have a false will. This is the free will that is conditioned. So we have this false idea of free will that is conditioned into us by our external environment. However, we can condition ourselves to create and feel into our true will, what our truth is, who we truly are. And through that, we can then repattern and reprogram ourselves according to what we want. And this can be a much faster track to enlightenment. Enlightenment in this context is the idea that we are robots with the ability to reprogram. And it's our ego that gets conditioned and formed. And through this, we can change the ego itself. We can create a change in the brain. And with our SOMA Breath techniques, we've actually realized that through a neuroscientist called Jeff Tarrant, that we are creating, through our SOMA Awaken technique, the same brain maps as people who have done a dose of psychedelics that have been used in clinical studies to create up to an 80% reversal in depression, severe depression. And what happens is the default mode network calms down. This is the area of the brain associated with the ego, our sense of self, meaning. This is what gets conditioned and gives us this full sense of free will, because it's the robotic part of the brain. It's the part of the brain that is all that we know. It's like what we know today. And it's hard to shift this. Some of these ideas are very hard to shift because they come from very old habits and programs from a young age. But the idea is that we can overcome the ego, we can repattern the ego, we can surrender to the ego but step beyond it and reprogram it. And that way what happens is we can actually wake up, awaken to our true self, our true power, our superhuman abilities to experience life. This is the tantric path. And what we've created with the SOMA Breath technique is the ability for us to use the tantric ideas of using sexual energy, life force, circulate it through the breath, okay, to wake up the entire hormonal system, to get into these divine altered states of consciousness, and then get into extremely profound, deep meditative states where we become one-on-one with the operating system of our mind, and then repattern and reprogram it at will. And we found in just a 22-minute dose that dramatic changes happen to the brain maps, the brain waves of people who do the 20-minute dose, to the same measure as people who have done a dose of psilocybin mushrooms. Now, psilocybin mushrooms have actually been considered to be one of the plants that were used by these ancient rishis, the soma. And let's imagine the soma is just a name for all of the psychedelic rituals were used using things like mushrooms, plants, different sacrificial rituals that would get people into these divine altered states. And some of these shamanic principles were also about invoking near-death states. They would go into extreme conditions, like some of the native Indians would actually tie themselves to a pole in the desert and just fast for days and days to the point where they're almost going to die in this intense heat. And through this, they'll have these profound visions. Others would take heavy doses of psychedelics. Others would go into extreme cold conditions, others into extreme heat. And there will be all these different techniques to invoke this kind of altered state of consciousness associated with near-death experiences, but not actually dying. However, I found that you can create the same effects and almost as profound, but just using the power of the breath, where you can trick the brain into thinking that it's dying, but it's not. And this is using the combination of rhythmic breathing and breath retention. This is what we've created in our SOMA Breath techniques. And when you do it with music and you do it to a groove, it's super profound. It can take you into very powerful altered states. And these actually are ancient tantric rituals that I've revived, resurfaced, and made it more scientific and more easy to follow. And this is what we teach our instructors. And we have some amazing, incredible results with our instructors. If you want to learn more about this, I've got a masterclass for you, which you can find in the, using the link below this video. And I also have much more content on this YouTube channel itself. So you can subscribe to this YouTube channel, and you can also share me your feedback and questions you might have in the comments below. So if you have any more requests for different videos, if you have any questions about this particular video, you want to learn some more about this, then I can answer those questions and also create more content for you. And also, I really urge you to test out a 22-minute daily dose as well and learn about our interpretations of these tantric techniques and embody them yourself by actually doing them. So, if this is what you want, you know what to do, and I'll see you on the inside. Much love. Peace.